At FIE, we're not just
students
and faculty.
We're not only learners
and lecturers.
We are expanding minds,
Expanding futures.
We're redefining the classroom.
We are life-changing.
eye-opening. We are a community.
Driven by our values.
That wants you.
You.
Yes, you.
To join.
Hello and welcome to In the Field, a podcast from FIE where we will be exploring all things study abroad. I'm Dr. Heidi James Dunbar, writer in residence and senior faculty, and I will be your host. Joining me today is my colleague Rebecca Claris to talk about making the most of your internship experience. Rebecca grew up in Seattle and has travelled to over 35 countries, including a 90-day journey circumnavigating the globe. During her undergraduate studies at Wellesley College, she studied, interned and volunteered in Spain, Belize, Costa Rica, Panama and Ecuador. After graduating in Spanish and biology, she returned to Ecuador and spent 4 years teaching English and science. Rebecca has a Master of Education from Bridgewater State University. She enjoys engaging with all aspects of FIE's academic provision and commitment to delivering high-quality, experiential and impactful learning opportunities for all students. She brings to the role her 7.5 years' experience on FIE's internship team. In addition to her staff role, Rebecca is faculty in work-based learning and teaches the International Internship course. Outside the office, Rebecca is a competitive synchronized swimmer. Good morning, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning, Heidi. Thanks for having me.
Of course, you know, what I really want to ask you about, having just read your bio, is synchronized swimming, artistic swimming, I believe it's now called, you said. But perhaps we'll get to that later. What we should get to is you've got so much experience both studying, interning and volunteering abroad as a student and an early career teacher. I wondered if you'd share with us what made that experience so important for you and what inspired you to do it, because not everyone travels and works like that, right?
Yeah, so I've always been fascinated by travel. And my parents really instilled a love of travel in me. In fact, when I was about 15, we did a trip around the world. So it was 90 days of travel, and we went to all different countries. I can still remember the list. We went to Paris, Switzerland, Italy, Greece, Istanbul, Dubai, Bangkok, Phuket, Perth, Bali, Singapore, Hong Kong, Beijing, Osaka, and Tokyo, all in one big trip. And so that was kind of the biggest trip I did as a child, but we did many more shorter ones. And so when I got to university, or college as they call it in the US, because I'm an American, I decided that I was going to design my academic schedule, my academic choices around maximizing the opportunities for travel. Mm-hmm. So during my time as a student, I did every type of travel option that they had available to me. That included in the course of just over 1 calendar year, I spent a summer doing an internship in Costa Rica at a butterfly garden. And then I spent a semester doing field studies in Panama and Costa Rica. And then I spent a summer at the University of Cordoba in Spain. And then I spent a summer volunteering as an English teacher in Ecuador. And then I went back to university for a semester. And then my college had a January term. And the last January term I was there, I did some research, biological research in Panama and Costa Rica. So I had a great time at university. but also not being there and still getting to study and travel the world.
It sounds absolutely incredible. I mean, really, really quite inspiring. I'm green. I'm glad people can't see this because I'm turning green with envy. It sounds wonderful. An incredible experience with your parents when you were a child, sort of that being able to see that it's possible and that it's an exciting and wonderful thing to do, because not everyone's able to do that. So that must have been quite an important foundational experience for you. What was the most valuable thing, do you think, that you took away from all of that experience as a student?
It's a good question. I'm not sure I know what was the most valuable, but in hindsight, some of the most interesting things I took away. One, I feel like I didn't really understand what it meant to be an American until I left America. Because when you're in the middle of it, you sort of have no reference point, no way to compare it. And it's only when you're out of your home country that you start to understand what is it that makes up me versus what is it that makes up my national and cultural identity. So that was really interesting that I learned what it meant to be American by leaving the US.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is that when you're living in any place, no matter where you are in the world, you have no sense, I don't think, of just how big the world is and how many people are going about their very mundane daily lives everywhere all over the world. And when you go somewhere, you get a sense of just how many people are out there living very different lives to you, or very similar lives, or just living in a way that I think when you look at a globe, the countries are all different colors, but there's not, say, a dot for each person that's in that place. And some places of the world are really, really dense. Like I've been to China. China is immense. You have these cities that I, as an American, had never heard of. And they can have millions and millions of people going about their lives. And then you have whole swaths of the world that are empty, and you're the only one there. And it's just fascinating trying to get a handle on what the world is and who is in it and how they live their lives. That I just found really interesting and fascinating, and a great something. I think that the opportunity to travel and see all of these different places has really been helpful and meaningful to me.
That's wonderful. I really like how you describe understanding what it is to be an American, or, for me would be to be English. But you're right, when you're, fish don't know there's water surrounding them, right? What's that famous quote? You don't know you're surrounded by. So that's really quite profound, I think. So you do understand what you're taking for granted, and what also, as you say, we share with others. That's really, really important. How then do you think our students can best prepare for their study abroad experience, their internships, more importantly, and to really make the most of that experience?
One, I would say, would be to read all of the information that we send them, which is perhaps not a very exciting suggestion, but we really do our best to craft materials that are specifically designed to help people going through this unique experience. So the more you read them and you spend time thinking about them, that's one big way to prepare. And then the other way to prepare is to really try to have an open mind. And that's a bit of a cliche thing to say. It's easier said than done, but just prepare yourself for the unexpected. Know that there are going to be things that surprise you, that frustrate you. And what I find really interesting working with just hundreds and thousands of students over the years is what it is that surprises you will probably be surprising. So students often have a very narrow focus on, oh, I know the food's going to be different, or I know the transportation is going to be different. But when it comes down to it, what is your challenge, the hardest part of living and working abroad? That in and of itself might be something that is unexpected. So taking a deep breath, recognizing that you're going to be challenges. Another thing I like to say is that it's good to have challenges because challenge is where the meaning comes from and it's where the learning comes from as well. If everything is easy, then you just sort of glide through it. You come out the other end having had a great time, but maybe not have learning or experiencing as much as you could have. So those challenging moments, which might completely catch you off guard, those are the best parts. So in terms of preparing, just knowing that it's going to happen, getting your support network in place, who you're going to be able to complain to or share your successes with while you're abroad, who's going to be an open ear for you to chat with. But try to expect the unexpected. Don't have a very fixed vision of what's going to happen. We all do that, right? When we're going to embark on something exciting, we build these stories in our minds of, oh, and what if I weren't run into, a princess on my walk to work? And wouldn't that be we build these, we spin these little fantasies in our mind, and that's fun. But know that the reality might be quite different to what you're imagining.
Yeah, well, that's great advice. I think one of the things too that I've noticed when I've been leading students in the IIC classes is showing them how sometimes an experience they think of as negative can be immensely positive. So perhaps they've discovered in those few short weeks that maybe marketing isn't the career for them. And they're disappointed, but it's actually, this is great because you have not embarked on a postgraduate career with a mortgage, discovering that you don't like this work and you've got no way of backing out right now. It's a really good way to kind of experiment and to find out actually what is exciting for you in the work environment, what you do like doing, because we can all be, as you say, we can all think we're going to love being in an office or love the fast-paced go environment of finances or whatever it might be. And then we get there and you think, I don't know that this is for me, actually. And an internship is a great place to discover. It's quite a safe place to discover where your real strengths lie, I think.
Yeah. All learning is good learning, right? And learning what you don't want or what you don't want to do is just as valuable as honing in on what you do want to do. I completely agree with that. And when you have a challenging moment, maybe you have a disagreement with a colleague or a supervisor, or an embarrassing moment where you misinterpret something or you don't understand what you're meant to do, or you go to the wrong place, or you don't understand who you're talking to on the phone. Any of those challenging moments are the best opportunities to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree. And it is a very safe place. People know you're an intern. They are prepared, absolutely ready to be helpful, to teach, to give that space to interns. And of course, they've always got all of us at FIE. Okay, so do you have any do's and don'ts that you would suggest for students?
In their internships?
Yeah.
So one of the best pieces of advice that I can give for the students doing the internships is to take it very seriously and treat it like a job. Be on time in the morning, be ready to go. I know that when I was a student, if I had, say, a 9 a.m. class, I might physically arrive at my class at 9 a.m., but I might not mentally arrive to my class until 10, 11. Whereas when you're in the workplace, when you're in an internship, you have to show up at 9, ready to go. So figuring out how you are going to be present, do your best work, take advantage of every opportunity, so that you can make the most of the experience. And I think I say that's one of my top pieces of advice, but most of our students don't need that advice because they arrive ready to go. They really want this internship to be the capstone of their whole time abroad. It does make my job easier how great most of our students are. They really want to work hard and they really want to get great feedback from their supervisors.
Yeah, they do. They're really committed, I find, the students. And often one of the things I've had to say is, you should take your lunch and you don't have to work beyond the hours allotted, because they're so enthusiastic. They want to, bring this very committed work ethic, which I think is a bit of one of the British to US differences,
Yeah.
actually, I would
That's
say.
a big difference. So we talk about this in the IIC class you mentioned. So that's the class that the students are taking alongside their placement, the International Internship Course Seminars. And in the US, there's very much this cultural sense of you have to show people, very obviously demonstrate to people that you are busy at all times. So this can be called the busyness factor. That's what Ferraro and Briodi call it, one of the readings we do in the class. That your level of importance in society is based on how busy you are. And so there can be a bit of a competition where when two people are talking, they're saying, oh, well, I'm busy. Well, you're that busy? Well, I'm even busier. Well, I'm even busier. It's almost like a competition. And that's just very much not the case in the average British workplace. It is not a competition to see who's busiest, and you don't gain any social points by being frantically busy. Instead, you have people who work really, really hard, and they may be very busy. And yet, if you come and say, hey, you want to go for a pint at the pub after work? They're going to say yes. They're still going to make space to connect with their colleagues, connect with their families after work, and have a life, even if their work is very busy. So that's something that the students need to learn, and hopefully they experience it for themselves in their internship, this idea that you can still be productive, but you don't have to portray a very high level of stress at all times. We can get a lot of work done, but be relaxed about it and still have a good time.
Yeah, I think that's very much the case. Any other differences you would point out?
I think there's a lot of differences. The level of difference often surprises students because they think, oh, the language is the same, although the language is not the same. There's a lot of differences. And the culture is the same. So they don't mentally prepare themselves for how different it's going to be. One of the big ones is how people work with time. That there's on time, and what on time means for people can be very different. So you might have someone from the US coming from a perspective that early is on time and on time is late. So if the office opens at 9, I got to be there at 8:50.
Yeah.
Whereas I would say that the average British office, 9 means 9. And if the intern is there waiting for you to unlock the door at 8:50, you're going to wonder why they got there so early. But also maybe, especially in London, the tube might be late. There might be an extra long queue when you're buying your coffee. You might run into your mate on the way to the office and have a quick chat, or the colleague across the hall. And so you show up at 9:10, and that's pretty culturally acceptable here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously it depends industry to industry, but you're right.
Yeah.
I would say as a Brit, when I did some work in the US, and I was late, even though I was on time, if that makes sense. There was hi, you've arrived. It's like, yeah, at 9. Is that okay? And, I realized very quickly that I should be sat at my desk, as you say, ready to go at 9 when I was in the States.
Yeah. So for what I would recommend for interns is to be genuinely on time and ready to go. But if you come to discover that your colleagues have a bit of a more relaxed approach to time, then follow suit with that. And it doesn't mean that they are disrespecting you by being, in your opinion, late. You need to match to them as the intern, not expect them to be matching to you. And then another thing that the Brits are quite known for is talking about the weather. That's a big one. And it's because the weather here is so fickle. The other day, Heidi, I I woke up in the morning and I was out with a colleague on a site visit, and we were walking around thinking, what a gorgeous day. It was sunny, blue skies. I had to take off my coat. Wonderful. An hour later, it was an absolute downpour. Just pouring rain. Everyone got soaked. And then that evening, there was a windstorm.
Yeah.
So you have to dress in layers. But you can always, if you need small talk with any Brit at any time, you can always talk about the weather.
That's absolutely true. My most British experience ever, you talk about understanding yourself as American when you were traveling. I was in Greece. Usually the weather's quite glorious. Obviously, it was summer. I was teaching there, and it absolutely bucketed down. Everyone around me ran to take shelter. I reached into my bag and pulled out an umbrella. And I realized it was possibly the most Brit identifying thing I could ever have done. It wouldn't have mattered whether or not there was a Union Jack flag on that umbrella. Everyone, I think, looked at me and thought, there's the English girl, prepared for all eventualities.
Yeah, well, in the UK, if you were to stay inside every time that it rained, you'd never go out.
No,
you might have a
exactly.
barbecue scheduled. It rains, you still have the barbecue. You still have the event, because otherwise you're never going to have it.
Oh gosh,
That's a funny
so
one.
true.
And another
okay.
stereotype that is absolutely true is tea.
Mm-hmm.
Brits drink a lot of tea all day long. It's not just a morning thing. It's not just an afternoon tea thing. All day long. And all our interns need to learn how to make a good cup of tea, because the social expectation is that when you make a cup for yourself, you offer all of your colleagues, hey, I'm making a cup of tea. Can I make one for you? And they'll make you tea as well. It's not like, oh, it's the intern's job to make tea for everyone. Everybody just makes tea for everyone all day long, all the time. So our interns need to learn how to make a tea. How do you make your tea, Heidi? Are you bag in, bag out, milk first, no milk?
Exactly. I mean, I am a coffee girl, but you are absolutely right. In fact, I even heard someone complain the other, not about any of our students. A friend was saying, this woman's leaving and I'm glad, she never, ever made a cup of tea for anyone.
Yeah.
When I heard this, honestly, I'm not kidding. And I thought, oh gosh, that is the most British thing I've ever heard. Complain, not about their work rate, not about their level of professionalism, none of that, but how many cups of tea they ever made. So you're right. It's not, you don't have to make every cup of tea or anything, but it is polite and part of our custom to, at some point in the day, say, running to the kitchen to grab a drink. Anyone want anything? And yes, to understand what they mean when they say, I like my tea very strong, or I like my tea milky like baby's milk, or because people will have very strong preferences.
Builder's tea. What is a builder's tea?
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you what builder's tea is?
Yeah. Why don't you share with everyone listening what a builder's tea is?
Builder's tea is ordinary breakfast tea. So just your Thai fu or just ordinary tea. So not anything fancy, not Lapsang Souchong, not Earl Grey. And it's quite strong. So it looks brick coloured. When you put the milk in, it's, strong fake tan colour. Let's just say that, shall we? Probably with sugar, but
I would say a lot of sugar in builder's tea, right?
Well, not necessarily. It's more sort of about the strength of the tea and what type of tea. So you're using ordinary black tea with not too much milk. That's where you start, and then they'll sort of indicate their sugar preference. But always boiling water, obviously, straight onto the tea bag. Never put the milk in with the tea bag. That's just grotesque.
Never put the milk in first. No. Never commit the absolute atrocity of putting your tea in the microwave.
Oh, why? Why would someone do that? No.
Honestly, it would be a very American thing to put your mug filled with water in the microwave to get the water hot. Maybe put the tea bag in before it goes in the microwave. You can't do that. If you were to do that in a British office, they'd probably fire you right then and there for crimes against tea drinkers.
They'd certainly be really, really upset and mystified. They'd be horrified. Yeah. Any other differences or things that one shouldn't do whilst working in a British office?
Another thing that you should never do is get straight down to business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you gather a group of people, you have to go through the pre-meeting, the pre-conversation ritual. So everyone gets offered a cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
You have your little chat, probably about the weather.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got any sort of social or other connections, you might mention that to someone,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start the conversation. And this is true for phone calls. It's not just for meetings as well. When you pick up the phone, hi, how are you? How you doing? How's the
Mm-hmm.
weather? Okay, this is the reason why I called. To jump straight in with, let's get down to business, I would say is a very American thing to do, because from the American perspective, you don't want to waste anyone's time. We're here to talk about a particular topic. We need to talk about it and go.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be very rude to the average British person, I think. You need to have that, make that social connection, have that little chat, and then we can have our business meeting.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because for us Brits, it feels more like you're caring about that person as an individual, as opposed to merely a conduit and a means to an end. But I can see how it's also respectful. Like, I know you're busy. Let's just talk about what we need to talk about, and I'll let you go. So you sort of see the benefits of both. But you're right. We tend to chat a bit more. How was your weekend? Is always a good one. Any plans for the coming weekend? If you're Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. How's your journey in? That's often.
Oh, yeah, especially in London.
Yeah.
There's always tube delays, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if anyone's stuck for small talk, they're kind of some key little questions you can have tucked away, I think, that can be quite useful.
Yeah, those are
what
good
do you think
ones.
about we'll get to the humour in a bit, because I do think there is a significant difference. But what do you think about, and have you ever noticed the indirectness of commands or questions, or if someone is asking for a colleague or an intern to complete a task? Have you noticed, is that true, that we might be more indirect in the asking?
It's very true. And I think it's one of the things that our students struggle with the most. The cultural miscommunication that can come from a student not understanding the indirect message that their colleagues or supervisor might be giving them. And I think it's wrapped up in the British understanding of politeness.
Yes.
As a culture, it's very, very important to Brits to always be polite. And there's many, many rules about being polite that can be almost mystifying to someone who's new to the culture. For example, when you're on an escalator in the tube in London, you must always, if you are standing, stand on the right, so that anyone who might wish to walk up the escalator can walk up the left. Now, it has been scientifically proven that this is a very inefficient way to go about things, but it's the polite thing to do, so everyone does it. So often the indirectness is wrapped up in this wanting to be polite. So instead of giving a direct instruction, intern, you must do this task, they go about it in a very nice way. Oh, hello. Are you busy? I don't want to intrude, but if you have some time, would you mind doing this little task for me? And from the intern's perspective, you might think, why is my boss talking to me like that? Of course, I'm the intern. You give me work to do, I'm going to do it. That's how this relationship works, right? But people might dance around things. But if they say something like, if you have the time, what they mean is, do it now, please.
Yeah.
Or they might say, this overall is great. You just need to make these 20 changes. It wasn't great in the first place. There was a lot to change. They just gave you a list of 20 things to change. So that can be quite tricky. So one thing I encourage students to do is to try to have their ears open and listen for some of these instructions that aren't framed as instructions. They're framed as choices, but they're not actually choices. They're instructions, directions. And then also
Yeah.
keep your ears open to how your colleagues talk to each other in the office. You can learn so much just by observing the interactions of others and how they go about things.
Yeah, that's very, very true. I think we use the subjunctive a lot too, instead of a command. So we'll say, if you could, would you mind? Is one that I notice a lot. Would you mind doing? Well,
Yeah.
well, as soon as you can. And in your head, you're thinking, okay, well, as soon as I can is probably by Friday because of these other things I've been asked to do. But what we mean as a Brit is today.
Brits will say, at your earliest convenience,
Oh, that's
which means
right now.
as
Right now.
soon as possible, please.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we also have some very indirect ways of expressing our displeasure, I think, which are quite funny too. Like, oh, it's okay. No. Really, it's fine. It's not a problem. Which means I am very cross and upset with you.
Or what about, that's an interesting idea,
Yeah.
which means that's a terrible idea.
Yeah, I'm awful for that. I have to be honest. That's something
Oh, no.
I raise my eyebrow. I know I do it. I've caught myself. This is where Zoom meetings have been really interesting, where you can see yourself when you realize you've got tells. So,
The
I raise my
eyebrow
eyebrow.
raise.
Yeah, and I say that's really interesting. That's interesting. Thank you so much. Anyway, yeah, okay.
Or what about sorry?
Oh, we say that too much. Yeah.
But you say it when you mean it, and you also say it when you think the other person should have said sorry, but they didn't.
We do. Yeah. If you're holding a door open or something for someone, a stranger, and they don't say thank you, we'll say, sorry. Oh, sorry. Was I in the way?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. But we also apologize for things that aren't our fault. So if you step on my toe, I'll say, oh, sorry.
Yeah. They run into you, and then you say sorry.
Yeah. That's so true. And all right, we say that. Hello, you all right? We're not actually asking if you're all right.
Yeah, if someone says you're all right, they don't mean you look terrible.
No.
Are you well? They just mean, what's up? How are you?
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah. It's just a greeting. Yeah.
I think that was one of the cultural differences that took me the longest to get over when I first moved to London. That reaction when someone says you're all right, that do I not look all right? Do I look deathly ill or something? I have a little bit of a cold, but I thought I was doing okay. No, you don't have to react that way.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Okay, any other differences that you think would be useful for students to think about?
One of the things that you mentioned was humor.
Yeah.
Brits have they call it a sarcastic, a self-deprecating form of humor. The way I like to think about it is there's that stereotype, the phrase that people say is that Brits have a stiff upper lip.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that a phrase that people use. But what does that actually mean, right? To have a stiff upper lip? What I think that means is that when British people are talking, they're not necessarily revealing their emotions on their face. So I, as an American, I move my face around a lot when I'm talking, and I'm smiling and I'm frowning and I'm just moving all of the parts of my face. So you can tell if I try to clumsily make a joke, you can tell I'm making a joke because my facial features give it away. Whereas a British person, you can't read their emotions on their face. Their lip is actually moving less. Stiff upper lip. So that can be really challenging, I think, for students, because a British person will make a joke by criticizing either themselves or someone else, and it's meant as humor. And other people, other Brits around will get that it's sarcastic humor. But sometimes our students will say, oh, they're so mean to each other. They're always saying these mean things, but they seem to be really friendly with each other. I don't get it.
Yeah.
And it's because that sarcastic banter is
Mhm.
part of the British humor.
Yeah, I mean, it's we use irony, I guess, an awful
Hmm.
lot. So we will say the opposite to what we mean. So, if you said, "I'm going out for lunch, do you want to come?" Like, "Oh no, not with you," and that's
Yeah,
a
exactly.
joke. And of course, but the difference is we tend to, well, we only tease and use irony and banter with people we like,
Yeah.
and that's almost an expression of our affection
Hmm.
when we tease and joke. If we are being very straight and honest with someone, yes, I'd love to, that would be very nice. That's where it's not that we don't necessarily like someone, actually, it's that we're unsure of how friendly the relationship is. It's still on a very formal footing. So I would
Yeah.
say, as an English person, if someone is teasing you and having a laugh and joking, it's because they think you're great and they think you're friends. Like,
Yeah,
there's a
exactly.
connection. But you can always say, "Oh, ouch," if you're not sure, and if something
Hmm.
hurts a bit. We usually take that very well, because there's always a bit of a risk when you're teasing like that, and we are aware of that, I would say. So we're always ready to kind of catch the ball and say, "I'm sorry, that was a joke. Too far. I didn't mean it."
Exactly. So you as an intern, if you see them making fun of each other, they're not being mean to each other, they're great friends. And if
Hmm.
they start to make fun of you, it means you've made it. You've
Yeah,
integrated into the
yeah,
group because they're including you um, in the banter.
yeah, yeah. You're one of them now. You've done it.
And a great word you can use if you're unsure is cheers.
Yes.
Cheers can mean pretty much anything. It can
Yeah.
mean thank you. It can mean "Ugh, cheers. That was annoying. Um, or it can mean, whoa, that's a bit too much, or oh, we're good friends. So that's a good way to
Yeah.
respond.
You're absolutely right. And speaking of cheers, what about the drinking culture?
Drinking culture. I would say, as an American, the Americans have a very funny relationship with alcohol. And
Okay.
it's something that I don't think you realize perhaps until you leave the US. But not
Hmm.
only is the drinking age higher, um, but there's so many cultural norms of when you can drink and when you can't drink. And so as a result, you might have to drink a lot in a very short space of time because you can drink here, but you can't drink there.
Right.
Whereas British culture, and also if you want to extend over to the Europeans as well,
Mm.
have a drink with your meal, have a drink with lunch. If you go out to lunch, have a drink. That's not considered unusual. And go drinking with your colleagues. So if they invite you out to the pub for drinks after work, Thursday's a big day to go to a pub with your colleagues. Um, they're not saying, hey, let's go get absolutely, completely drunk with each other. That's not what the invitation means. The invitation
Yes.
means, why don't we go relax a bit, have a pint? If you don't want to drink alcohol, that's fine. Get a Coke or some other soft drink, and let's just connect to each other as people, have a nice chat, relax a bit after work.
Yeah, absolutely. The pubs are not necessarily about drinking. I think that's something that gets
Hmm.
lost. It's like they're not the equivalent of a bar in the
Right.
States, are they? A pub is a public living room. So you get comfy and you can have a coffee, you can even have a cup of tea or soft drinks, like you say. And when you're drinking with work colleagues, it isn't about getting drunk and doing shots. It's, as
Hmm.
you say, about relaxing, just taking the professionalism down a tone in informality, but it isn't about
Hmm.
suddenly we're best friends who can reveal everything. And I think that can get lost
Yeah.
sometimes in
Yeah.
that translation. Can we just give students a hint? Because I think this can be baffling, about buying rounds, what buying a round means.
Oh, yes. A stereotype that Brits have about Americans is that Americans are penny pinchers. So if you go for a meal, let's say, with an
Hmm.
American, Americans are, and this is again the British perspective, obsessed with counting down to the penny what they owe on their meal versus what you owe on your meal. And it's considered quite rude and weird to think about meals in that way. If you're sharing a meal or a drink or a visit to the pub with someone, let's just split it. Who cares if I ate a little bit more or you drank a little bit more? You'll get me next time. So the way the rounds work is it's not that so much that each person goes to the bar, orders their own drink, and pays for their own drink so that they can be sure to pay exactly what they are spending at the pub. Instead, one person will say, hey, I'm buying this round, take everyone's drink order, buy all the drinks, and then when it's time for the next drink, it's someone else's turn, and they buy everyone around. And by the end of the night, typically, most people in the party will have bought a round for everyone else. So if you're going out with
Exactly.
your friends, you share these rounds, you do things together. But if you're an intern who's out with your work colleagues, usually they recognize and they understand that you're an intern. So often the colleagues wouldn't expect the intern to buy one of the rounds for the colleagues.
Absolutely right. And it's also perfectly acceptable to say, I'm just going to get my own drink tonight, guys. I'm not staying very long, which is
Yeah.
code for I don't have it in my budget to shell everyone's rounds this time round. So if you're in that situation and someone offers you a drink, you can always say, oh, no, it's okay. I'm just going to grab my own this time, if that's okay. And usually your colleague or sort of friend will say, no, let me get this for you. That's not a problem. There's a kind of implicit understanding there that we understand you might not have the cash that evening to buy drinks. So it always feels a bit of a minefield. It isn't. It's only difficult if someone accepts all the other rounds and then never offers. It's similar to the tea situation in an office, actually.
Yes. Yeah, it's not about the money per se. It's about the congeniality and the friendliness, and we're all equals and we're all sharing this wonderful experience with each other.
Exactly. And that I think is one of the key differences, is where I think our cultures are becoming more and more enmeshed. We are slightly less individualistic. It's not about the self. We still really value being part of a team, pulling together, taking care of one another, even if it's just every now and then making everyone else a cup of tea. It's about that symbolism of we're all in this together, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. But none of this students really need to worry about because they're supported in the classes we talked about.
Yes. So one of the great things about doing an internship with FIE is that not only does FIE organize the internship for you, which is great because we've got contacts all over London across hundreds of different companies, organizations, not-for-profits, NGOs, but then also you're supported with so many different layers. So you get the support of your internship advisor, who's the one who organized the internship for you. And if you've got any questions, you can turn to them. You also do your seminars. So when the placement starts, you also start a series of seminars, and your faculty, the person who's instructing your seminar class, is a great resource. And your colleagues, your peers who are doing the experience and in class with you. When I've been teaching on the class, I always love to see when other students have really good advice for the other students who are having challenges in their internship. And then if you need any sort of what we might call pastoral care, so medical, health, well-being, we also have the student life and the residence life teams that are able to support and help everyone at every stage. So no matter what level of support that you need when you do the internship, we've got you covered and we're going to take care of you. Because the thing is, doing an internship abroad is inherently going to be a challenging experience. And there's going to be something that happens along the way that you're not going to expect and that you might need some help with. So we're here to help you.
Perfect. So the key there is, whilst this is a challenge, they're not alone. There's always someone to help navigate those challenges. Can you share a city secret with us?
Yes. So my city secret is out near where I live, a lovely place called the Horniman Museum. Have you ever been, Heidi?
I have, and I love it. It's so quirky and
It's
peculiar.
so great. So the best way I can describe the Horniman Museum is basically you had this gentleman who traveled the world and built a collection of stuff that he likes. And he put it all in this museum, and you can go and see it. And it's got something for everybody, Heidi. So there's a whole bunch of taxidermied animals. So it's a little bit like the Natural History Museum.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole bunch of just fun artifacts. So toys, children's toys, decor, decorations, just unusual things. They have an incredible collection of musical instruments.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most varied musical instrument collections in the entire world. And they have a beautiful display so that you can hear what all of those different instruments sound like.
Uh-huh.
They have an aquarium. So you can go and you can see the different fish species, and they got the different kind of climates of aquarium. There is a farm with farm animals. There is a butterfly garden, all sorts of different butterflies, and then really stunning gardens. Gardens that
Yeah.
are not only beautiful, they're populated with species from all over the world. And there's a cafe, and it's on the top of a hill, so you get a stunning view of London. And then on top of it, they often do special events. So there's weekly farmers markets and vintage markets that meet there. So it's kind of a little bit of everything, and it's free.
I didn't know it was free.
You have to pay a little bit more if you want to do something like the aquarium, or they have a special exhibit. Recently, they had Lego dinosaurs, so dinosaurs built out of Legos. But the special exhibits are always changing, and it's a really cute, lovely, fun, free thing to do just outside of London in Forest Hill.
Yeah, no, it's a lovely part of South London as well, actually. It's worth visiting that part of South London. That is a fantastic secret. Thank you. I will put the link to that in the show notes, but that's wonderful. And if anyone has any questions or wants to find out more about interning with us, go to our website. Again, the link will be in the show notes. Was there anything that we didn't talk about? Anything else you wanted to say for our potential interns?
We've talked a little bit today about some of the differences between US and UK culture. And maybe two more things to say about that. So sometimes British people can have certain negative stereotypes about Americans, but overall, Brits tend to love Americans. They think they're a bit funny. Americans are a bit loud. They're a bit overeager. They're too quick to treat you like a friend, whereas Brits take a little bit longer to be friendly. But they do also enjoy those aspects of relating to and working with Americans.
That's very true. Yeah, we are slower to connect sometimes, but once we do, we really do.
Yes, you've got an ally for life.
Yeah, that's very true.
And then another thing is that London specifically is a city located in England on the British Isles, but it's not really a British city, is it? It's a global city. You have people from every part of the world in London. So sometimes what our students find is that they have in their mind that they're going to have a quintessentially British internship experience. And then they get to their internship and they discover they're the only person for whom English is a first language. And actually, their colleagues are from Italy and India and Ecuador and all sorts of different places. And they discover that they're in a London workplace and they're learning to adapt to completely different cultures.
Yeah, which is actually quintessentially a London experience
Yes.
because it is so beautifully, wonderfully multicultural. That's what makes it so special.
It does.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, on that note, thank you so much.
Thank you.
To learn more about our faculty, courses, programs, and indeed internships, do visit our website www.fie.org.uk. And if you've enjoyed this episode, check out our others wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you so much for listening. FIE provides life-changing study abroad experiences in the UK, Ireland, and Spain. As a non-profit educational organisation, we are passionately invested in making a difference for our students as the future global leaders of tomorrow and the field of international education as a whole. The FIE podcast is a creative and academic space for exploring everything, the people, the places and opportunities that make your experience so valuable and exciting.
FIE. We're here to help you
Unlock a wider
brighter future.